Okay, we're going to now talk about dermatomes and answer the what questions and what is a dermatome and what are the primary locations to test each dermatome. So first thing, what is a dermatome? Well, a dermatome is an area of skin innervated by a single spinal cord level, sometimes referred to as a single spinal nerve level. And usually we show this picture of the skin like this, and it shows all these segmental levels. And so here we're going to show a little close-up of one of them, and I'm going to highlight one of those dermatomes, and there's the C6 dermatome. And so this is okay, we're going to now talk about dermatomes and answer the what questions and what is a dermatome and what are the primary locations to test each dermatome. So first thing, what is a dermatome? Well, a dermatome is an area of skin innervated by a single spinal cord level, sometimes referred to as a single spinal nerve level. And usually we show this picture of the skin like this, and it shows all these segmental levels. And so here we're going to show a little close-up of one of them, and I'm going to highlight one of those dermatomes, and there's the C6 dermatome. And so this is the area of skin innervated by a single spinal cord level. What that means is we show the spinal cord and say, hey, there's the C6 spinal cord and its associated C6 spinal nerve coursing over the C6 vertebra. And then we take a look at this area of skin and say, hey, where is that sensory neuron going to go? Well, that's the C6 dermatome, so it goes to the C6 spinal cord level. What about this area of skin? Same thing. What about this area of skin? Same thing. The dermatome is an area of skin, in this case, that whole region outlined in orange, innervated by that single spinal cord level, the C6 spinal cord level. And so we often see it in this picture like this, where there's a segmental organization of these dermatomes. And there is some overlap, however, between adjacent dermatomes. And what do we mean by that? Why is overlap of dermatomes important to know? So adjacent dermatome territories overlap, sometimes by about 50%. And so here's the T3 spinal cord level, and there's a part of the T3 dermatome. So we say, hey, there's a sensory neuron, it goes in, and how about this one, how about this one, how about this one? Now what I've done is they're all these different sensory neurons are all going to the same part of the T3 dermatome. Now let's take a look at the T4 spinal cord level and a portion of the T4 dermatome. Again, watch as these sensory neurons are coursing from their associated levels. And there's a T5 level as well. And we take a look and we start seeing these, okay? Now what we notice then is that between the T3 and T4 dermatomes, we have these overlaps. And between the T4 and T5 adjacent dermatomes, there is this overlap. And so what we notice is that if you were to knock out, and you see that red cross, knock out, say, the dorsal root of T4 and lose all those sensory neurons, we still have enough overlap sometimes between adjacent dermatomes that an injury to one single spinal nerve level may not represent any detectable sensory loss. And so why do dermatome maps have these red dots on them? So good question. Let's take a look and see. These red dots, one there, and one there, of the L2, L3, and L4 dermatomes, at the location of the red dots, there's no sensory overlap that occurs. And therefore, at the location of the red dots, this is equal to the place where the sensory neurons are associated with only one spinal cord and spinal nerve level. And so, for example, let's test the L3 dermatome. So we then see, all right, there's our L3 dermatome when we see that red dot. Well, here are our associated L2, L3, and L4 spinal cord levels. So there's the sensory neurons coming from the L3 dermatome, and there are the sensory neurons in the L2, and they're the ones in the L4. And you see right about where that red dot is, this is where no sensory overlap occurs. Therefore, the red dots are where sensory neurons are associated with only one spinal cord level. And the reason why we do this is that every map you will look at in your career that shows dermatomes, they're all different. If you're an anatomist, a neurologist, family medicine doc, PM&R, sports medicine, often their dermatome maps are a little bit different. But the location of the red dots is where where you test, because that is where there's either no or very little overlap of adjacent dermatomes. Okay, now clinically testing dermatomes. Well, Here we have this diagram on the right that shows all the segmental dermatomes and the location of testing, and on the left is a textual way of describing where you test them. And we have not shown all the dermatomes here because these are key clinical ones that you'd use to test and that you can guesstimate between. So for example, if you want to test the C5 dermatome, you touch the lateral side of the elbow. If you want to test the C6 dermatome, you test the dorsal surface of the proximal phalanx of the thumb. What about the C7 dermatome? You test the dorsal surface of the proximal phalanx of the middle finger. What about the C8 dermatome? The dorsal surface of the proximal phalanx of the little finger. Now, how about the T1 dermatome? You'll test the medial side of the elbow. Now, does that mean it is the only place where the T1 dermatome exists? No, you can see all along that medial part of the forearm, all of that represents the T1 dermatome. But at that location, the red dot, there's the least amount of chance of overlap between adjacent dermatomes. Now, T4, we skipped a little bit. It's an easy one to find because you'd use the midclavicular line and right at the level of the nipple, T4. How about T10? Well, you find the midclavicular line at the level of the umbilicus, T10 for belly button, okay? And then what about L3? That's the medial femoral condyle above the knee. And how about the L4 dermatome over the medial malleolus? And how about L5? It's over the dorsum of the foot, over the third metatarsal phalangeal joint, okay, right at the basically base of that third toe on the top. Now we're going to look at the back, and so we look at the back of the lower limb. For the S1 dermatome, we use the lateral aspect of the calcaneus in the heel. The S2 dermatome is midpoint of the popliteal fossa, which is the back of the knee. And then the S4, S5 dermatomes is the perianal region, just behind the opening of the external anal sphincter. So for dermatomes, that is the picture that is often referenced for showing segmental organization of all the dermatomes in the body. And the red dots are the locations shown for the textual elements on the left for the key places that you test dermatomes. And that, my friends, is a recap of the dermatomes.